You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by.
Thank you all very much. I'm honored to serve as chairperson for this Friday, November 17th, 2023 meeting of the Harlem Community Development Corporation. The directors have received the relevant written materials in advance of today's meeting and are free to ask questions at any time. Consistent with the policy of our parent corporation, Empire State Development, we welcome public comment on the items on the agenda. After each item is presented and any comments are received from the directors, we will allow members of the public to provide comments. All comments should be limited to 2 minutes and should only address the item that is under consideration. Please note for the record that the public was given the opportunity to comment on today's agenda items by submitting their written comments by 4:30 p.m. yesterday to hcdcboard@esd.ny.gov. I'd like to state for the record that no comments were received from the public. Before we begin with the substantive portion of the meeting, I would like to ask the directors whether anyone has a potential conflict of interest with respect to the item on today's agenda. Hearing none. The foregoing has been noted for the record. And our first order of business, I'm going to take liberties to shift the agenda around a little bit. And we will begin with the presentation from Mr. Terrence Cho to present the request for authorization to amend the modified general project plan, determination that no supplemental environmental impact statement is needed, ratification of authorization to acquire and dispose of real property. Terrence.
Good morning, Chair Foster, President Archer, and members of the board. Today, we are asking the HCDC board to authorize related actions related to the Victoria Theater project. We are seeing a light at the end of the tunnel, and we are close to opening the project for all uses of the project, including the cultural unit, which will eventually be owned by the state of New York. Today, we're asking the board, the members of the board of the HCDC board, to authorize a modification of the general project plan for the Victoria Theater related to the uses and size and bulk of the commercial signage and marquee areas. We are also asking the board to authorize a modification of GPP, of its general project plan, to reduce the number of residential units as well as reduce the parking requirements related to the number of residential units with relation to the Victoria project. And finally, we are also asking the board to authorize a ratification of the acquisition and disposition of various condo units related to the Victoria Theater project. I will add 2 notes to that last item. This is a ratification of a prior authorization that this board authorized back in 2013. In relation to the potential transactions related to the Victoria Theater. Part of a title search related to this transaction. Carlene, as HCDC counsel, and I have as the HCDC staff. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from the director?
I guess I will ask my question. So, can do so as quickly as possible. So I noticed in the materials provided that the number of residential units that are if there were in the original plan were 230, and that the modified in 2013 were 230, and the modified development program as of 2023, there are 191. Given that these units were brought to market in 2021,
Yes.
what is the cause of the delay for the board being notified about that difference between 2021 and 2023?
Yeah, so the reduction in units was related to design and constructability issues. It was really, as the construction progressed, they altered the configuration of the units, and as they were designing the number of 1-bedroom studios and 2 bedrooms and so on, they reduced the number of units from 230 to 191 by approximately 40 units due to constructability and design issues. In 2021, as you mentioned, Keisha, the residential tower did open. In retrospect, we probably should have gone to the board to ask for the authorization of this modification of GPP. However, the full number of 191 units has not been fully leased yet. Right now, it's at about 65% occupancy. So, and the other thing is that in the prior approval for the original GPP back in 2013, the language had always said that it was approximate number, so it had said approximately 200 units at the time. So we are technically in compliance. So I would consider this more as a refinement of it. And for the delay, I think it was a combination of pandemic and construction and all that, but we probably should have gone to the board earlier. But again, this is not, it's more of a refinement of previous language.
Thank you.
Sure.
Curious.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions?
I'm sorry, I have a question.
Mhm.
So the senator toured the residential portion, I guess maybe a couple months ago, and was concerned about the size of the
Mhm.
units. So I'm, I guess, going off a question around reduction in units. The size of the units that are existing are fairly, I guess, small,
Mhm.
right? For what would be considered, a mix between affordable market rate. So I don't know, when you, I guess, I don't know if it's a question or a comment. If you have 230 and it's 191, I can't imagine how big 230 would be. 191, as they are now, are pretty small.
Yeah, I think it's related to the design and construction issues that as the tower was being built and the construction progressed, they just realized they could not fit in the larger number of units that was originally envisioned at the time of design.
Wait,
Is that-
if she has a follow-up,
yeah.
sorry, I'm not the chair.
No, because it wasn't really a question, more so of a comment on just the size of the existing unit. And so it's 230 as to 191 is one issue,
Yes,
but the 191 being so small
I see.
is another issue. And I don't know if that goes into why you're only at 60% lease, or if there's some other, especially when you think about the cost, even affordable.
Mhm.
I'm putting this in quotes, affordable now in Harlem, and market rate in Harlem for what I understand to be the size of the unit. I'm wondering if that is contributing to the fact that you're not leasing up at a higher rate.
Yeah, I'll talk with the developer. So the developer has been responsible for the lease up of the units and the occupancy. I know there was a little bit of delay with marketing some of the units, with having those available to be rented. So it could be more of a scheduling and lag issue, but what I will do is I will ask for the size of a typical in square feet, I mean, a typical 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom salon studio, and we can compare that to what's common in New York City. And then I will also ask for what their input is on why there's been a little bit of a lag in getting full occupancy.
For the affordable units, there were like about 30,000 applications for the affordable units, which that's all being handled or overseen by HPD, because it's all a lottery. But yeah.
So Terrence, you'll be in touch with the senator's office to
Yeah.
get that information?
Sure.
Okay, great, thank you. That's, okay. Mr. Howe.
One of the things, especially in today's market residential, you're gonna find that new residential units are all gonna be a lot smaller than the ones when you do locally.
Absolutely.
That's just what it is. And the other dealers are gonna be all electric,
Correct.
which you know you have a low rent. I had an apartment that was paying low rent. The electric bill was more than the rent. So that's just the way of things. The developer himself, his prior projects were small, lower than you would expect. Kind of apartments where people need places to live. And you're right, you're paying more money now and you're getting less. It's just the price of construction. New units, that's just how they come.
It is. That's why we're fortunate. If you grew up here, you have a great sized apartment.
Yeah, I still want the information though.
Yes.
I had a kind of a piggyback question on yours, Teresa. It was if you can also share with us the mix, so.
Yeah, that I can share.
As well,
Yeah.
given that the number has been reduced. We, of course, and the reason obviously we're asking for the mix is because we Harlemites know that we Harlemites need, a higher number of bedrooms because we are families as opposed to studios and 1 bedrooms. And so I'd like to understand, how many of the larger units. I don't know what the mix was planned to begin with. I was on the board. I wasn't on the board.
Yeah, I don't know the
Studios
mix,
to 3
right.
bedrooms. I have no
Yeah.
idea what that was initially. I actually would like to know what that was initially
Yeah.
and what that is now.
Yeah, I can get that information.
Thank you.
And communicate that, yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, hearing none. I will entertain a motion, please, for approval.
So moved.
Fantastic, thank you. All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you, that passes. All right, next, Ms. Turner Beverly will now present the request of ratification of authorization to enter into a lease operating agreement with the Apollo Theater Foundation.
Thank you very much, Chair Foster, and good morning, board members. Coming up on afternoon. So this item, of course, relates to a proposed lease operating agreement between the HCDC and the Apollo Theater Foundation. This issue has come up before the board previously on multiple occasions, or iterations. Most recently at the directors meeting on July 21st, 2023. For the moment, in the interest of time and other constraints, I'm going to dispense with going through an in-depth review of the history. With some familiarity with the background facts, but certainly happy to entertain and respond to any questions. An in-depth summary of the key terms of the lease/operating agreement as currently proposed are before you in your board materials packets. I can take a moment to highlight some points that I think may be of particular interest based on discussions at prior directors meetings that I sort of defer to the chair.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Board member, am I okay to do that? I know.
Okay. I know.
Time and concern.
And this is this, as you know, I raise a lot of questions about this, so.
Absolutely, yes. So, just in terms of some particular highlights, the annual base rent proposed to be $1. With respect to cultural partners, and questions were previously raised about that. The tenant has agreed to use commercially reasonable efforts to provide both theater and office space within the cultural unit for the use of local cultural groups based in the Harlem area. Space would be offered at cost, and arrangements would be subject to the approval of the landlord. With respect to cultural unit permitted uses, I want to call out that there are terms in place to safeguard against abandonment of the cultural unit. Generally speaking, if for a continuous period of 12 plus months, the cultural unit was not occupied or used for a permitted use, or if the tenant had failed to use commercially reasonable efforts to use the cultural unit as a live theater or performance space, the landlord would then have the option to terminate the lease. Common charges, tenant financially responsible for the common charges allocated to the cultural unit, except that the landlord will provide a supplemental rent credit for tenants' common charges for the first 6 years of the lease to be applied against financial obligations or costs relating to operating expenses, repairs, and other amounts due and owing from tenant to landlord. The supplemental rent credit would be for the first year equal to tenants' actual common charges, that full amount. For each subsequent year, the supplemental rent credit shall escalate at 3% compounding per annum. Credit would be less. Following the first 6 years of the lease, commencing with the 7th year, tenant would be responsible for 100% of the common charges allocated to the cultural unit. And supplemental rent credit is intended to address and account for the hardships that the Apollo has sustained as a result of construction delays and circumstantial setbacks. Operating expenses. Tenant will be responsible for all operating expenses related to the cultural unit. That's inclusive of gas, electric, heat, hot water, cleaning, extermination and trash removal, so on and so forth. Repairs. Landlord would be responsible for the cost of maintenance on windows, electrical, except common elements, plumbing, except common elements, and the heating and or hot water fixtures and air conditioning units, as well as all assessments related to maintenance, repair, and replacement of certain common elements of the condominium. Aside from this, other categories of repairs would be borne by the tenant. The responsibility would be by the tenant. Call out pilot issues. For so long as a not-for-profit arts organization is operating the cultural unit space for qualifying nonprofit purposes, HCDC will agree not to require the operator to make payments in lieu of taxes. Pilot. Naming rights. Apollo will have the right to name the cultural unit subject to approval by HCDC. And lastly, with respect to signage, the tenant shall have the right to install signage, decorating, and advertising at and on the portal. Landlord will come in and pay for the services of a third-party advisor and mediator to act as a signage consultant to work with and mediate among the cultural unit, the hotel unit, and retail unit for the sharing of time on the digital signs on the Victoria Theater facade, which of course includes the digital marquee, the historic ticket booth, and an exterior digital sign under the digital marquee. To note in conclusion, turn back to the chair, directors are requested to authorize the corporation to enter into a lease and operating agreement with Apollo on terms and conditions substantially in accordance with what's been presented in the materials during the meeting. The directors are further requested to authorize President Archer or his designee to take such related actions as may be necessary or required in connection with the lease and operating agreement. The chair, in terms of
Thank you.
space for questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Turner Beverly. Yes.
What's the portal?
With the portal?
What's the
So
portal?
the portal area is, if you go into the Victoria Theater, past the hotel elevators, straight back, there is essentially an archway. It's near the educational exhibit for the original restored theater. And this archway, Apollo has been calling the portal, and it will serve as an entryway for theater patrons as well as Apollo staff. And Apollo has designs to make it a more grand entrance and also provide wayfinding for the theaters.
And they can present advertising there as well.
So what that's referring to is specifically advertising for shows at the Victoria Theater. And so there, as part of the design, Apollo is going to have 2 digital signs as well, like digital posters essentially. One, I think, will be a constant, sorry, it's the one on the right. The one on the right will be a constant A for the Apollo logo. The one on the left is intended to advertise the shows going on at the Victoria. It's not intended to advertise, like they're not selling advertising to third party like Coca-Cola or something like that.
And that last question on that, I'm sorry,
Oh, sure.
along the same lines,
Mhm.
that part, what you just covered is in the naming rights, correct? Like they have without the right to, without limitation, name the theaters, the lobby, the stages, the ticket booth, the kiosk, the gallery, the concession area, and all the elements of the office space.
That's technically a little bit different. That's referring to, the naming rights is referring to the actual spaces within the office and theater units and the individual rooms. So for example, if they wanted to name their boardroom after one of the board members, they could do that. If they wanted to name the theater, one of the individual theaters, theater 1 or 2, as after someone, they could name it, those theaters.
Denise.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear how many cultural spaces that you had open to.
I can answer that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thanks.
If you're referring to the theaters, it's 2 theaters, one 199-seat theater and one 99-seat theater. I was mentioning this to Ernestine earlier. I do intend to have Apollo present to the board their idea and philosophy of future program at the Apollo. What I have learned from discussions with Apollo is that they do intend to have a established program that specifically targets smaller nonprofits within the Harlem catchment area. And what the main benefit of this program will be use and rental of the theater spaces, including labor, so ticket agents, ushers, that sort of thing, at subsidized rates for theater. And there will be a set of qualifications for use of, or to apply for that program and take advantage of rental rates at subsidized. Qualifications would be they have to be local in the Harlem catchment area, and they have to only generate a certain amount of revenue so that they can ensure that it's a smaller local artist. In terms of the other cultural units, there are offices available, particularly on the 4th floor, that if they're not used for future Apollo expansion, and right now there are no plans to do that, that could be made available to cultural partners at what Carly mentioned, at cost, that for rental rates to rent those offices.
And will this be publicized?
Yes, it will be. That's part of the presentation that I want to have Apollo. I did ask Apollo if they could attend today. They weren't quite ready yet. So we'll have to schedule that in a future meeting with the board. So what I would like Apollo to present is first the details and content of their future programs and planning at Victoria, as well as how they plan to reach out to the local community and publicize these opportunities.
Yes.
Sorry, so just to back off, I'm glad you brought that up to me. So, maybe a month or so ago, it's all blurry. A group, an arts group came to our office, with information, on their programming and the desire to, perhaps be housed as one of these cultural tenant in one of these offices, maybe using the space. However, some of the questions that came up and that I would like for the Apollo to consider, and I know this is, I'm speaking on behalf of the senator, is when they lease out or rent or sublease these spaces that are Harlem-based. We need to be really specific on what that means by Harlem-based, right? I think that what I've seen is that that is a very nebulous term, right? And so for our part, we need to be very specific on what that means. The other thing is we're talking about generating revenue, providing jobs. How is that related to Harlem as well?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the group could not provide much information on how their programming actually brought in people from Harlem, how it generated jobs for people in Harlem, how it contributed to economic development in Harlem. The whole presentation was, I'm from Harlem, I should have a space. I'm a Harlem artist, I should have a space. But everything that seemed to be generated out of their work could not really be directly related to Harlem. So, of course, you know, Senator, okay, how are we connecting this? They Apollo, I mean, this is historic, right? This is very serious. As you all know, historic district, a lot of money being put into this project, state money being put into this project. It has to tie back into the district in a significant way. So you're talking about if there's a film festival, are you employing caterers from Harlem? Are you employing assistant producers from Harlem, right? Are there writers from Harlem, right? You know, I'm not concerned with somebody coming in from Hollywood, right? You know, things like that. So want to have some baseline requirements for what those tenants or leases or contract agreements look like in these spaces.
Yeah, so with that, so the Apollo has told me about two potential programs that they are that they're building out and designing. One they're calling Cultural Collaborators, and then the other one they're calling Culture Forward. They haven't been released public yet because they're still essentially figuring out the details of it. One program is intended to be, they're both intended to promote small artists and within the Harlem area. One program, the Cultural Collaborators, is intended to be an incubator that would be housed at the existing Apollo Theater, and then they would have access to the rental space. So it's essentially artists who may not be part of an established group yet. It could be a solo artist, but who needs a little bit of help, whether on the technical side or training side of how to perform in front of people, or just may need more resources in general before they kind of go onto the big stage. So that's the intent of that program. The goal of the other program, and there could be also some cross-pollination between the programs. The goal of the other program, Culture Forward, is the subsidized rental program, where it's a local artist group or a performer who really just needs space, and they're used to, they know the industry, they know how to set up a performance, but they are looking for space within the area. What I would say, you know, I definitely agree with you on your points about that it's more than just, when you say Harlem based, it's more than just like kind of finding, it's more than just finding like kind of, you know, performing a dance or a play. I mean, there's more behind that, you know, all the jobs that are created behind the scenes in the back of house, and all of the economic generation or impact that comes for those performances. Apollo will be, I will ask Apollo to present its details of that and be very specific about the qualifications to get into these programs and the requirements. And I will also pass on this advice as well as kind of the expectations. And then, yeah, I would definitely encourage a dialogue when that presentation between Apollo and this board comes about, and express those sentiments to them when I get that scheduled.
I'm just gonna say this one last thing. You said about local.
Mhm.
The key term is how are we defining local?
Yeah, exactly.
Because, I could be in the garage, that doesn't mean a car.
Yeah,
I can be in Harlem, that doesn't mean a Harlem,
right.
right?
Yeah.
So how are we defining?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Sometimes when you buy made in Italy, it could be manufactured in some other country, but finished in Italy, that sort of thing. So I definitely know what you mean.
Thank you. We're wanting both, wanting the language.
Sure.
Keisha, then Sean.
Sorry, Sean.
Two questions.
Sure.
Or a question and a statement. First question is when does the Apollo anticipate they'll be ready to come forward?
I think it could be fairly soon for a preview. I imagine it'll probably be multiple meetings, because one of the programs is intended to come a little bit later, which is the incubator program, what they're calling cultural collaborators, that will be incubated artists at the Apollo Theater, and that requires a little bit more setup. So depending on schedule and all that, I mean, it could be as soon as honestly next month to at least give a preview. I think probably, I know this wasn't exactly your question, but it's related. They intend to have their first season at the Victoria Theater opening in the spring of 2024. So I think in early Q1 of next year, closer to opening, when more details have been finalized, we could have a second meeting in the early new year. Yeah.
Okay, so the statement that goes with the question, those who've been here before know that I've asked these questions before. And why I'm asking the questions. I'm uncomfortable right now voting to affirm this, to ratify this, not having those details. I'm uncomfortable, and I also have to leave physically, but I'm uncomfortable with the lack of, I understand what you know. I also know the background and understand what the Apollo's track record has been in terms of prioritizing community programming, investments in community members, et cetera, and how accessible the Apollo has been over the last 10 years, which is not particularly accessible to everyday Harlemites. It is our gym, it is our home, it is our mecca of Black culture. We're proud of it, but that doesn't mean that it can not stand up and do what it needs to do for everyday Harlemites. And so the only reason I'm not making a motion to table this is because I saw that there were two other questions to be asked, but after I hear the two questions, I would probably like to make a motion to table this and have a meeting in December where they can present and we can take a vote with the information that we need in order to, to be fully informed, to understand what their plans are, and then perhaps even include that, frankly, in some of what we are voting on, because I will say also, I wanted to say thank you. I'm pleased to see that we had, there was a couple of improvements to language, obviously having the HCDC board, HCDC having prior approval on tenants, et cetera. There were a few other things that were, I think, an improvement and clarification from where, in the language from where we met in July. So I want to acknowledge and thank our attorneys for accomplishing that. But I am still not quite there. So I just want to say all of that and then turn it back to the chair so she can entertain any comments.
I wanted to follow up and ask, with the concerns raised, is there already an internal system in place to ensure that the organizations are Harlem-based?
So yeah, I'm glad you asked that. That's what I was about to respond to with also Keisha's last comment. So the lease, it's really more of really an assignment to rent space. For the internal operation, there are the essential terms that are fairly general, I will say, about promoting local artists. To what I think is that there are ways as Because the language is fairly general and HCDC as the landlord of saying promoting local artists, promoting these programs for the local community, we do have ways to essentially as using the lease as a vehicle to enforce more specific requirements. And so I think like what, the specifics of the operations of the Apollo and their programming is probably not something that's appropriate to be put in the lease, in the lease, because it's not that type of document. But, I know the Apollo will certainly hear the HCDC board's concerns and will certainly, and we will certainly enforce them as, through via ESD and HCDC. I would see the lease as really more the vehicle of getting the project to a closing so that Apollo can occupy the space, because Apollo really cannot start to use the space, the offices and the theaters until the lease gets signed.
Yes.
In part asking this question because I know one of the questions on the congressman raised was, excuse me, knowing, or just given that the site is in the empowerment zone, right? Ensuring that, and we spoke to Mr. Duncan, Blair Duncan, sorry, from UMass this morning. And I know he noted that there have been some difficulties in terms of local hiring. So this is also just in part so that this is on our radar, that we are then essentially losing federal tax dollars that are, that we're entitled to by local hiring. So that if there's any way that we can also keep that in mind, that it's a larger benefit, to the community as a whole, and that benefit will be in through 2025. So we should really try to keep that in mind as we're moving forward and putting plans in place.
Thank you. Thank you. And I just had a question about the language here about the naming rights. At the end, it says, such improvement not to be unreasonably withheld, conditioned, or delayed. Am I reading it correctly that it's kind of erasing the fact that approval by HCDC? It's like you can approve it as long as it's urgently quick.
As long as we have good cause, if you don't approve, so long as we have good cause, we need to have good cause.
Yeah.
But we're the landlord. I'd cite
I just wanted to clarify. You had something to say.
If I could just make two quick observations, points for consideration. The board certainly, as you all know, has the authority to handle the motion, the pending item as it will. But I do want to piggyback on Terrence's point about, the lease really being necessary in order to approval to execute the lease really being necessary in order to move forward with enabling the Apollo to take possession of the space and start to really implement the programmatic plans for the benefit of the community at large. I also want to underscore again what Director Keisha pointed out about the language that's been added, Chair Foster also alluded to around the approval rights that HCDC has. Those are rights with teeth,
Yes.
Yeah, they're definitely rights with teeth, and they can sort of serve as a impetus and a jumping off point for further negotiations again, where HCDC has power and teeth to shape what things look like, to flesh out beyond just sort of the baseline terms of the lease, to flesh out how things proceed.
I really have to leave.
Yeah.
I really, no, I don't know what this does.
I know.
I think it really screws things, but I really have to go.
Okay.
So I don't know. I'm sorry. I don't know what that does to your
Can we-
ability to take a
can we
vote
take a
or
vote
to do something.
Okay, so
Sorry.
let's do this, please. I need a motion, please, for.
One also,
I have
really
one
quick,
other question for this gentleman, a quick one. When you guys come here and you got great ideas of how to be inclusive and if nobody gives us any idea of what you're doing to do outreach, we have no idea.
yeah,
I mean, everybody has this thing, we're gonna hire people, we're gonna give them there are a lot of groups that are under the radar, that independent filmmakers, actually youth groups that do drama, and other people that.
Holly, I'm
Yeah, no,
really sorry.
So the question should be answered.
Calling the question. I need a motion.
I was gonna make a motion as well, but my motion was to table the matter for a month for the Apollo to come back. And for us to vote in a month. I recognize that it's important for them to take possession, but I also think it's important for us to be fully informed before we accept the motion.
So your motion is to table. Is there a second?
Yes.
Second, is there, all in favor? Oh, is there any discussion around that? Not that we have that much time for it. Okay, all in favor for tabling this discussion until January?
December?
Let's try for December.
December.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, that's unanimous. It's
Sorry. I gotta do what's right in our conflict.
Can I take a moment? Can we, I apologize, I did not recognize. Okay. 1 second.
Oh, I can't leave yet.
Yeah, no, just 1 second. I'm told I have to do the minutes. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes from April 20th? Thank you, ma'am. Second. All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you very much. Keisha, have a good weekend. Yes.
Happy New Year.
I'm standing up for those of you, and Keisha, I didn't say this, that on Wednesday, November 29th, there will be a grand opening at the Harlem Renaissance Harlem Brand Hotel. Okay, you are all invited. Please indicate at 1:30 p.m. So please, you all have my cell. Please indicate that you will be attending by texting me and letting me know so I can put your email address and you'll get an official invitation. That's it.
Thank you.
Wednesday, November 29th at 1:30 p.m.
And I would like to give the opportunity, I'm so sorry I did not introduce the folks that are sitting here in our audience. I know you're not public, you're ESD.
Hi everyone, I'm Wilmer Brawl, Director of Community Relations at ESD.
Yes, nice.
Hi, I'm Anna Piceur, also at ESD, Senior Vice President of the Community Relations Team.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Yes.
All right, are there any questions?
What's going on at this party? I'm saying. Like grand opening. I wanna-
Well, remember, this will be the hotel. Right. So I guess there will be food and there will be speeches.
All right.
Oh, okay.
One second, 2 more seconds. I'd like to also
Yes.
have our new, right?
That is my deputy.
Yeah.
That is my deputy, Earl Thomas.
Okay. And now I'll take a motion to adjourn, please. Thank you, Madam Second. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, happy Turkey Day, everybody.
Yeah.